Welcome back, everybody. So when we last left our Intrepid builder, I was finishing up the parts, all the internal parts for the left flap. I did end up coming back out last night. I didn't record anything. I came back out and I finished all of the prep on the skins. So all the edge prep has been done. The holes have been dimpled, and hard to tell, but this edge has been just barely broken over because that edge is going to lay on top of the bottom skin. So I wanted to have a nice tucked up finished appearance. One other thing of note before I forget about it and we kind of get back into this, dimpling these holes, the trailing edge holes on this top skin are a real pain. In particular, this one right here on this side. The other side, I was able to use my close quarters die and the hammer and mandrel like I've used in the past. But on this particular one here, couldn't get it in there. It wouldn't reach far enough to do that. So I ended up having to use my, let's see, let me grab it real quick. Here we go. My close quarters dimple die set. And all this is a small set of dies, and you put a mandrel through it, i.e. a finishing nail, and then you feed that up through the hole, and then stick the other side on the other side, and then you grab it with a rivet puller and squeeze it that way. That worked out. It's not the greatest dimple in the world, but it is an acceptable dimple. I hate having to resort to this thing. It can be a real pain to use sometimes, but it'll definitely get into spaces other things can't. So that was the only challenge. Otherwise, it was just normal, boring edge prep while I sat here and just watched a movie. So today we're going to start taking all of the prime parts and putting things together. There's still more fabrication that has to be done. It's not going to be completely assembling because I have those brackets I have to install. There's still some holes that have to be drilled for some nut plates. But yeah, should be, I hope, fairly straightforward. And we'll at least see if maybe we can get done with this flap today, and then we'll start over again with the right flap. Stick around, enjoy the voiceover part. I will see you guys later. Welcome to the voiceover part. So, spoiler alert up front if you want to stick around, I do make it to the end of this flap. When the directions said this is one of the easier components to build, I don't think I buy that. This was kind of a pain. There's a lot of tight spaces to try and get your hand into to rivet, and there's no real clear order of operation. They just kind of leave it up to you to figure it out. So some lessons were learned. Just like everything else, the second one of these I do is going to go much better. But starting out there, you saw I took the spar and I got that bracket that I made riveted to it. And now I'm putting the end rib on, and I'm putting the other ribs in, and you see me counting and looking, and in the midst of my prepping ribs last night, I forgot one. Not sure how. It got mixed in with the parts for the other flap, so I had to quickly clean it up, dimple it, and threw some primer on it. So, best I can figure, the best order of operation when you start putting this together is get that bottom skin clecoed on, and then rivet those back rivets on those ribs, the ones that have those little tiny spacers. Because once you put the top skin on, there's no way to get back to those anymore. And that's pretty much the next thing that has to happen. So you need those rivets in right now. Plans don't say that, but it becomes pretty evident unless you want to just leave clecos in there and forget they're there forever. Speaking of primer real quick, somebody commented on one of my other videos asking about the primer I use, and then kind of commented on its ability to do its job or not do its job. I don't want to get into a primer wars. There's plenty of those on all of the forums everywhere. Everybody can pick and choose their own flavor. I was of the mindset that I wasn't going to prime at all. This is just a step above that. And none of these parts that I'm shooting with this self-etching primer are going to see any wear or tear. There's nothing that's going to rub on them, and they're not going to be exposed to any regular elements. So I have no issue leaving them the way they are. Just likewise, I would have had no issue just leaving the bare aluminum. I'm pretty sure this airframe, corrosion-wise, will outlive me easily. So that's all I got on that. Everybody choose whatever works best for you. So here's something I should have done when I was mocking everything up the other day. I should have gotten that side bracket, that one I bent at 6.3 degrees, drilled in place earlier. The plans didn't really say. I wasn't sure if there was a reason to wait until final assembly. There's not. So if you're doing this, just get that thing drilled when you've got everything clecoed together, and that way you don't got to go back and clean holes and fix things after the fact. So there is a, I can't remember the part number for it, but there is a 1/4 inch size nut plate that has to get riveted onto that rib. And the tooling hole that's in there now is a guide that helps you get the rest of that bracket aligned. Once you get it ready to put the nut plate in, you have to upsize it. There you see me doing that now to 1/4 inch. And then you got to get that nut plate installed now, along with that bracket, because once you put that rib in, you won't be able to get to those rivets again later to be able to do that. The downside to this, and you'll see it later on, is that nut plate is so close to the rivet that goes through the skin that you can't put that rivet in, you can't buck that rivet. The alternative would have been I could have drilled the nut plate out and possibly tried to put it back in with the rivet gun later. I think that would have been a pain too. So my fix, since there's already a couple of blind rivets that are going in the trailing edge on the bottom of that skin, I just put a blind rivet in there. I think it's going to be fine for what it's doing, and it's definitely not going to be visible. But just know there is no way to get a bucking bar in there and buck that rivet with that nut plate in. So yeah, here you see me putting the rest of those rivets in on that bracket so that I can put that end rib in and get it all clecoed in place. These were pretty easy. All of them were easily able to be squeezed. This part was a pain. It is a very, very tight section to get your hand in, and then that curved piece doesn't do you any favors. So if you got big hands, and it's just hard to get down in there and manipulate the bucking bar, but it is doable. It's just kind of a pain. I'm glad I saved these little V-block things that I had from the elevators way back when. There you go. You see me putting that blind rivet in where I can't shoot one. But those V-blocks came in handy for holding this thing in place for me while I went through and riveted it all. So just flipping around, doing the other side. The order I did the overlapping joint of the skins pretty much first. I started in the middle and worked my way out to the edges. And then I started kind of in the middle ribs and worked my way up and out. Seemed to be the best way to do it. Now the very trailing edge 2 rivets on the outboard ribs, you can't get down there to buck them. Not on the inboard one. The outboard one you can because the flange is there. But the inboard one you have to put blind rivets in, and the plans tell you that. There you see me pull the straight edge out, make sure that I didn't twist this thing or there's no bow in it, and happy to say it is perfectly straight. Here's another thing I should have done yesterday when I was cleaning up the spar, and that's put that nut plate in the middle for that hinge pin retainer that I made. No reason I couldn't have done that earlier. Didn't hurt anything to put it in now. So now that all the skin's riveted to the ribs, you go ahead and take the spar and cleco that in place. and then you have to put blind rivets in all of those number 30 holes that hold the spar to the ribs. And here you see me trying to use the Milwaukee riveter again, and thought maybe it was jammed, cleaned it out, but nope, it just doesn't want to pull those rivets for whatever reason. So to hell with it, grab the manual one and finish them off. Okay, here's another order of operations learning point. And I thought about this while I did it. Pretty much like, yeah, once I got about halfway through clecoing it. I should have riveted the top row of rivets on the skin first and then put the hinge on, because the hinge ends up being mildly in the way. If you're using a rivet gun, it's not that bad. But I was hoping to be able to use the C-frame, and it's definitely too much in the way to try and use that. So for the next one, I'll do it the other way around and see if I can pull that off. But otherwise, it was just a mild inconvenience. So here you see me getting the rivets all in, and pretty sure it actually takes longer to put the rivets in the hole than it actually takes to go through with the squeezer and squeeze them all. The only key takeaway when you're riveting on this hinge is make sure that you got the riveter or the squeezer set up in such a way that you're not going to crush those eyelets. So you need a thicker flat set on the bottom so that you can squeeze the rivet but not crush the eyelet. Really does amaze me that that really tiny soft aluminum hinge is pretty much all that holds this flap on. It doesn't seem like it should be strong enough, but I guess it is. Check all the rivets, make sure they all look like they should. So here you see me setting up the C-frame. You can rivet with this C-frame, and I thought this might be a perfect opportunity to set those top rivets, but can't do it. So gave up on that idea. Back to the rivet gun and the bucking bar, and it really wasn't that bad. It probably only took me maybe 5 minutes to set all of those rivets. I used tape this time because this is on the top and it's prominent, and I wanted to look decent, and that wall safe tape does a pretty good job of protecting the skin. Plus I could just put all the rivets in and not have to worry about them flying out or having to put one in at a time as I go along. So pull the tape off, admire my handiwork, and then there's just a few rivets left. You can see a cleco there. I think the plans actually say to put blind rivets in that spot. I'm not sure why. You can very easily squeeze rivets there, so maybe I'll regret it later, but I squeezed some rivets in that spot. I think they were 4-5s or 4-4s. And then that other section where the two brackets go together, you squeeze those. Those are 4-7s. Yeah, the very top one I couldn't get, but nothing the offset couldn't handle. So there it is, all riveted together. Now it's time to pin the other half of the hinge back on. And again, this side doesn't have holes in it yet. That's so I can adjust the flap so that the trailing edge of the flap lines up with the trailing edge of the aileron later on. And after test fitting it, after this was done, I can tell it does need to move out just a little bit. So there it is, all pinned in place, and I couldn't help myself, so I went ahead and clamped it up to where it goes just to see what it looks like. Starting to look more and more like a wing. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed it. See you on the next one.